Hi, this is Susan Arango from Little Guy CGI, and today I'm going to do a tutorial for you on a robot model that Ollie created and how to apply material to it and a texture that shows scratched and distressed and rusted metal in cycles. And I'm using Blender 2.73, the newest release. And if you're new to Blender, we recommend that you go to File, User Preferences, and right here you'll see Select with right or left. By default, Blender selects with right. Just click left, save settings, and your mouse will work the way that you're used to it working. As you can see, we have the robot model here, and we're in Blender Render right now in Edit mode. We're going to change this to the Cycles Render, and over here in the first window, if you come down here where it says GPU, CPU, you want it set to GPU compute so that it utilizes your graphics card for the cycles rendering. You need to have a NVIDIA 630 or above graphics card in order for it to do that. If you don't, leave it set to CPU and you can still use cycles. It'll just render fairly slowly. But if you have the NVIDIA card, it should render quickly so you can see your changes in real time. Okay, now to get started, we're going to split the screen across, and then we're going to split this screen down. It looks rather complicated when you first look at it, but it'll make sense in a little bit. This one we're going to leave as the 3D window right now. This one on the bottom we're going to change to the UV image editor, and this one we're going to change to the node editor. And that will allow you to see your changes in real time as we go back and forth between the different windows. So right now you have your model in edit mode, your node editor up here, your UV image editor down here, and if we go over to materials, there's no materials assigned to this at the moment, so we're going to assign our first basic material. You hit the plus sign here, go down to new, and then hit assign. You'll see a node tree pop up here, and all this is simply telling you is that you've now applied a material to this model. If you hover over this window where the model is and hit Shift Z, it'll change it to the rendered view of the model. If you come back over here to the node tree, click on color and move the color wheel, you can see how your changes to the model show right away. So you can make your base color of your material anything that you want. Your basic gray, if you want it blue, whatever it is that you want. But just realize that when you're doing the texturing and adding other materials and all that, if you're selected on this material, it's going to change the entire model because this material affects the entire model. So for right now, that's the way we want it, so we're going to leave it like that. Now if you hit Shift Z again while you're hovering over this window, you'll go back to edit mode. My computer fan goes on every time I Shift Z into the cycles rendered because it's utilizing the graphics card, and it gets a little choppy and it makes things slow down over here. So unless you need to see the render at the moment, I would suggest that you just leave this in the 3D mode for now. Another thing you can do is go to the first setting here. If you scroll down to where it says sampling, and then under render and previews, you can lower these values so that your picture won't look as good when you hover over this. Right now it's set at 100, so you watch the numbers up here, they'll continue to climb until they reach 100, and the model gets clearer and clearer as it reaches 100, and every time you move it, it starts over trying to get to 100 again. And that can make things slow down in your other windows. So if you change these to say 10, then it won't look as good in your rendered, but it only has to go up to 10 instead of 100. So your computer won't struggle as much, and see how it's not as choppy when I move it because it isn't struggling to reach 100. So that's just another thing that you can do while you're using cycles to allow your computer to be more efficient. Okay, so like I said, we're going to leave this in the regular 3D view. Okay, I'm pushing down Shift and my middle mouse button to move the model down, rolling the middle mouse button to zoom in, and then just holding my middle mouse button and turning to get the view that I want. Now, this model would take a really long time to put textures on the whole thing the way I'm going to show you how to do it today, because it's a complicated model. So I'm just going to do it on a very small portion, just so you can see the setup of the node tree and how it affects the mesh, and then you can go and utilize that setup on any part of the mesh that you want, or if you're going to use different images, and you'll understand in a few about what that means, then you can just apply a different material to a different part of the mesh and start all over again and just recreate the node tree using different images. So but for right now, we're just going to utilize this part of the helmet. So we're going to come down here in edit mode. I hold down my middle mouse button and pull to the side, and this will allow you to change between faces, edges, which are the lines, and vertices, which are the little points in between each one. We want faces for this. So holding down Shift, we're going to select the faces, and only the faces that we want to our texture to be affected by. The rest of the model is going to remain the default material that we just applied to it. So for right now, we have these selected. We're going to hold down our middle mouse button, slide to the left. We're going to select materials again. So right now, if we Shift Z, this is what our model looks like. We only selected these UVs, so when we hit Add, New, and we add a new UV, even though we're not going to change the color, and we hit Assign. Now we're going to Shift Z again, and if you come over here, this is a new node tree that's associated with this material. So if you click this color button and now change it, only the area of the UV that you selected is going to be affected by this node tree setup. If you go back to this material, you'll see the same type of node tree, but it's a separate one that's associated with this material. So if you now go into that and change the colors, now the entire model is affected except for your spot here that is affected only by the other node tree. So these materials each have their own separate node tree that you can affect independently of each other. So let me put this back to our default. Oh, my computer's struggling. There we go. Alright, so we'll put that one back to there, and the robot, Ollie likes it blue. So we're going to make it kind of a gunmetal blue. So we'll put it there and make it a little bit darker. Right about there. So this is the only area we're going to affect with our material and our textures, and now we have that material applied and associated, and we have our node tree set up to go along with it. And as you can see here in edit mode, this is the only part that we have selected, so we'll leave it in edit mode for now so that the computer isn't struggling. Unwrap, you'll see them unwrap over here. So this is the only part of the model that's going to be affected is the UVs that are unwrapped over here. You now go down to Image, hit New Image. We're going to name this Mask because in effect that's what you're creating. 1024 by 1024 is an acceptable resolution. If you need it more detailed, then you can go higher, 2048 by 2048 and so forth. You're going to leave it black. You're going to uncheck alpha and hit OK. It automatically sizes up. Don't get concerned. Just use your middle mouse wheel, roll back, and you'll see it right here on the black background. The reason we're using black is because we're going to paint white on it where we want the rust, metal, whatever to show through. And that's how a mask is created, using black and white, the same way you do it in any of the photo manipulation programs like GIMP or Photoshop. It's the same principle, using the alpha. In Blender, down here where it says image, whenever you see this little asterisk next to the image, it means that you have made a change to a image that you have here that needs to be saved. So click image, save as, and go to you go where you want to save your image at and click save as. Now we're going to go down here to the bottom, press your middle mouse button, pull to the left, and this usually says view. It looks like this, and we're going to change it to paint. Press T on your keyboard to have your control panel come up, and Blender is usually set to white as default, with the secondary color as black in the background. Make sure your strength is all the way up to 1, and your radius you control by pushing F and pulling or pushing your mouse to change the size of your brush. We're going to come down here to paint stroke, and you're going to change the spacing to about 60 or so, and you're going to change the jitter to 0.15, and then you come down to paint curve, and you're going to change it from this soft one that it starts at on default to the hard line going across, and that should give you the effect that you want. Sometimes you can't tell where your mesh correlates with what you have over here, so I've gotten into the habit, if I need to, drawing a map, because here this one I can pretty much tell what corresponds to what, but sometimes you can't. So is add an image texture node to our node tree up here. And what this is going to do is we're going to, the image texture that we created that we now need to save again because we've made changes to it. We drew in the numbers, and Blender's telling us that by having this asterisk here. Click it, save as, and I'm just going to save over the original one so I don't have a ton of files. We're going to come up here to the image texture, and what this is going to do is take this image down here, and it's going to apply it to our mesh through our material. So you come here to open, you select the texture that you just saved, you change this from color to non-color data because it is a mask. We want it to not show the black, and we want what we're going to put underneath it to show through the white. So you simply attach it here, and now you can see this image shows up on the model here. Right now it's showing black because we don't have a mix shader in here yet, but we'll add that in a little bit. But this was just to show you that if your mesh opens in a way, if you have several pieces and you're not sure which one's which, this is a very easy way to figure out the directions of your mesh and what they're doing. I don't know if it's necessary. It works for me, and it helps me to understand the process of this texture image down here and how it's applied to the materials and how it's going to show up on my model over here. So it works for me, and hopefully it'll work for you. Okay, so moving forward, where I need to change this back to all black. Like I said, you can go like this. If you hit F on your keyboard and pull, you can make this bigger or smaller as you need, and this works just like an eraser when you're using black or white. So we'll change this back to white and hit F and make our thing smaller. Now as you see, it didn't change over here. That's because we haven't saved the changes that we made. We haven't reloaded the changes in here, so this will continue to show here until we do that. But for right now, we don't need to do that. So I'm going to hit Shift Z, go back to the regular edit mode so the computer can not be struggling so hard. One thing in the tutorial that I watched of Andrew Price on this, he suggested using a reference picture, which I think is a good idea. So here's a reference picture that I got off the internet. It's just of a little robot that has some nice rust up here look on his head, with some of the streaks running down, which is the effect that I'm going for in this tutorial. So what Andrew Price said to do was utilize this when you're making your mask. You want your white to be very solid in here where the silvers are, and then where the grays are, and then where these colors are and are very faded, you want the value or the strength opacity of the white to be less, and that's what creates this look when we put the metal underneath to come through the white on top of the material color. Ours is blue, this one is yellow. That's how you create that effect. So this is the image that I'm using as a reference. You can use any image that you want, and it just helps you to know where to place the color on your UV down here. So I guess I could leave this over here. And so if we look here up at the top, that's where our right here corresponds with right here, and right here on our mesh corresponds with right here and right here. So for this look right there, I'm going to want to do very heavy white along here. So let me make the brush a little bit smaller. And we'll hit F, make it smaller. And then you just go along the edge, and like I said, this was much easier in the tutorial that Andrew Price did, because he used the tablet. But I'm just going to go along like this. If you go outside of the UV line here, it doesn't matter, because this UV isn't touching anything else, so it'll only affect it if it goes into the next UV, but this one's okay for right now. So we'll just come along here like this. Same way down here with this one. And again, I'm just doing this really quickly because I just want to show you how to apply the textures and how they are affected by the material, how they show through this mask. So, you know, this isn't going to be super pretty and super perfect and all of that. I just want to show you, because I'm still trying to wrap my brain around exactly how all of this stuff works together. It's very cool. I must admit, it's very cool. So we have it kind of thick along the edges there. So now I'm going to lower the opacity down, let's say to half. We'll increase the brush size a little bit. We'll go back to our reference picture, and if we look here, you can see along the edges here, we'll make slightly more spaced out white dots and less opacity. So we'll go along the edges here like this, and these are the ones that we want to run down. So we'll do like that. And then we're going to lower the opacity even more, make this smaller. And we'll have it do this. And again, it looks like a mess right now, but when you see how it is affected by the textures showing through the white, you'll have a much better understanding of how to make it look interesting, because right now it just looks a mess. But it can be tedious. You can play around with the different settings and values and all of that to try and get the look you want as you understand. And in order to move this, I'm just pushing down my middle mouse button, moving it around, scrolling in and out with my middle mouse button. So I'm sorry I didn't say what I was doing. That drives me crazy in tutorials I watch. I'm like, what did you do? I gotta stop it and go back and try and rewind it and do it frame by frame. And so I try to say what I'm doing. So alright, so for right now we're gonna go with this. Like I said, it isn't perfect, and you can really take a long time to get the mask just right so it shows through exactly where you want it to show through. But for right now, we're going to go with this because you'll be able to see how it's affected. So we need to come down here and save the image that we just made, and we'll make this 2, just in case we want to go back to the original for whatever reason. Now we need to reload it up here. So we're going to come, I'm sorry, I should scroll in here. We're going to come to the file, and like I said, we leave it at non-color data because it's black and white. Come to the file, we choose the file that we just made, and we apply it there, and that's going to run through the color into the output. So if we come over here and hit Shift Z, now we see our mask is applied here, and it looks a mess, like I said it was going to. But never fear, we will fix that in just 1 second. Okay, now up here in your node tree, this can get a little crazy after a while with all the different nodes you add and whatnot. It's very cool looking, reminds me of the Borg from Star Trek. So I try to keep them organized up here. I don't duplicate these too often. You can click on one and hit Shift D and duplicate it like this. However, it retains the values from the one you duplicated it from, and it has screwed up what I was trying to do a couple times, and it took me forever to figure out that that's what it was. So I've started just making new ones because I find it easier than going back and trying to change things. So we hit Add, we went to Texture and Image Texture, and we created a new image texture. So this one we're going to leave as color, and we're going to open and go to you're going to go to your texture pack by Blender School that I recommended. You can use any metal texture that you want. If you have one of your own or someone else's that you use, you can use whatever you want. I just found these and they work really well for me so far while I'm learning. So when you open it, you're going to see it like this. It isn't very helpful to be able to pick what you want. So we'll click here, and you'll see all the different metals that come with this texture pack. Each one of them comes with a JPEG, a displacement, a normal map, and a specularity map for each of the metal files in here. We're going to use the scratched metal. That's the one that I think looks pretty cool on this robot, so that's the one we're going to go with. So we're going to start with the JPEG. Here's the displacement, normal map, specularity. We're going to open the JPEG one right now. So you click on it, open image. And as you can see, it's loaded into here now. We're going to leave this color for right now, and you'll understand why in a little bit. So if we take this, there isn't anywhere to plug it into. If we take it across and put it over to volume, it won't work. Roughness, normal, it won't work. So what we need to do is add a mix shader. And what this basically is a node that will take the values from here and the values from here, mix them together, and output them to there. So the this we're going to take out and we're going to put into the FAC. This we're going to unhook and put into the top color. And if we take this and hook it into the bottom color and then connect it to the output, hit Shift Z, we can see our mask being applied, but it isn't being applied properly because it's showing through black, and that isn't what we want. So what we need to do, keeping in mind that we're using the mask with the alpha, with the white, we want the white to show. We need to create another diffuse. Come on now. My computer's getting temperamental. And we're going to put this in between there. It was just a regular white default shader. If you didn't see, let me show you again. It's under shader diffuse. That's just a regular color one. If you click here and have the color come out to here and this come into there, what it's doing is it's now running this picture of the metal through the white shader and mixing it with our mask, and that's why we're now able to see, we're now able to see the image of the metal showing through just where the white is on here in the varying strengths of white in here. So if you look really closely, you can see where it's whiter in here, the opacity is very high or low, however you say that. It's very white, is a lot darker. Where it starts to fade out a little bit here, it gets lighter, as you can see right here. And then where it fades out really, really light, you can see down here that it's very, very light. The other thing that this image is doing is it's giving you these scratch marks. That's why it was called scratched metal. So it's giving you these nice scratch marks. So even though it looks, you know, mildly cool right now, we can make it look much cooler. Okay, so now we are going to add another image texture. So add texture, image texture. This one we're going to put down towards the end here because this is going to be our displacement texture, and that goes right into this output node here. So let me scroll in a little bit. We're going to do the same process as before. Open. We're going to go to our texture pack. We're going to go down metal, and we're going to look and make sure we're picking the right one. And what we want is the displacement map, which is this black and white one. This is the specularity, normal, displacement, JPEG image. So we want the displacement. So we're going to load that into this. And if we scroll in here, you might be able to discern the change. We also want to change this to non-color data. The only one you leave color is your JPEG image. The rest of them you change to non-color data. We're going to come out of color and right into displacement. You can see if I unhook this, if you watch right here on the model, you'll be able to see a little bit of a shadow come in, and what this is doing right here as well. Let me unhook it again. See right here and over here and over here. What it's doing is it's just giving it the illusion of depth. If you turn it on its side, it's still going to be smooth, but as you hook it and unhook it, you can see down here it's giving it the illusion of some depth. to the metal that the robot's created out of. So that's the displacement map. Now we're going to add another image texture. And like I said, these node trees can get a little crazy, but if you just break it down and do it step by step and look at what it does and all of that, it starts to make sense after a while. And I'm very, very thankful to Andrew Price for his Rust tutorial, because it really helped me to understand how these images here and this map affect the model here. And I played around with it a lot afterwards, and it really helped me to figure out exactly what was going on. So hopefully this will help you guys figure out how you can apply this to your model so that you can get some very cool looks to them. So we're going to add another image texture, and same thing, go to our metal. This time we're going to add a normal map. That's the purpley blue thing here, which is also going to give us even more of a textured depth and valley and hill feel to it. So we click on that, open image. Now this one's going to be a little different. This one needs a node of its own because it's a normal map. So you come down here to add, and you go to vector, and you pick normal map. Again, we change it from color to non-data color, color to color. Now we're going to move this back, and we're going to move this over here and this over here, because it needs to be plugged in to a normal slot. So we have our normal image texture in this image texture node. Then we have it hooked up to our normal map here, and we're going to take this diffuse node, and we're going to hook normal to normal in there. And you can see the changes that are applied in the mesh over here. If you unhook it and hook it back up, it just gives slightly more depth and definition to the scratches and makes it look like it's actually scratched metal. Okay, so we're now going to apply one more node, and then that's going to be it for this tutorial. Like I said, the Andrew Price tutorial I watched, he had a humongous node tree, which I did take a picture of. It was very cool and all that, but I'm still trying to just do a very, very, very basic tutorial, because I'm still trying to wrap my brain around this whole texture thing, and I just wanted to be able to show you how the basic node tree is set up and how it affects your model, how to create the mask, and how the different values of white create a different look over here, and how you apply the image textures, and then what nodes you run them through give you the looks that you're achieving over here. So the only other node that we're going to add for this tutorial is a color ramp node. So go to add, converter, color ramp, and we're going to put that in between these two nodes. And if you notice, it changed it to values of black and white, because this color ramp is black and white. So I'm going to scroll in on just the color ramp so you can see it. Okay, how it's controlled is these two little houses here control the color ramp. Sometimes, especially when you're using cycles and you click, nothing happens, and it's very frustrating. Down here, you know which one you're selected on because of the color that's showing up down here. So if I click on white, I know this one's selected. If I click on this one, nothing happened, nothing happened, nothing happened. There we go. Now it's black. Alright, so if I take this slider and I move it up, watch what happens to our model. Okay, so that's definitely not a look that we want. So we're going to keep that down here, maybe right about there. If we take this one, we now know we're selected because it's white, and we start to slide. We can see that the white values are getting more pronounced. So if you're happy with just the shades of gray and the white and all of that, then you don't have to do anything more here. However, if you want to apply a color that gives you more of a rust look, we're going to hit the plus sign, and that's going to give us another possibility of color. So this one's white, this one's black, this one's now a gray. Put it in between the two. So we're going to click on this one. We know we're clicked on that because it's gray. We're going to come here, and rust tends to be an orangey brown type color. So we'll find something over here. We can adjust the values like this, and if you look, you can see how it's affecting the different white values of our mask. So down here, which is I think right about here, or maybe it's here, right here, on the outside here where this the white is very light, you can barely make out the orangey color. And then in here where it's a little more gray, you can see that it's affecting it a little bit more. And then as we come up here, and now right here we see that it's a lot whiter, a more dense white up here is being applied even more. And then as we come up, we can see the white up here, that the color is being applied very heavily right here. So it gives us the effect of the rust. And then if we adjust these other values, it will change. So in here you can see that now some of the whiter white is blacker, some of the lighter white is brown, and then this down here is even lighter. And then if we adjust this value, and you can see how it's making it look like actual rust. That's if you think back to our reference picture, it isn't as silvery shiny as the reference picture was, but we could make it that if we took this and made this more of a silvery shiny color. You can see by doing that how if you just play with these values, it gives you the look of pitted metal. Now, my only criticism in my own work here is I can see the line here, the differentiation line between this and this. I believe if I took this mesh and moved it over and made it connected, that it would look better. You wouldn't be able to see that separation there, but you can see how it looks like pitted metal here. These scratches look like they have depth. If we adjust the white values of the scratches, it can make it look even better. And you can just play around with the settings. You can also add even more trees, sliders here, that will give you even more control over things. Maybe make this one the rust color. And just watch it as it interacts with the others. Okay, I don't like that, so I'm going to delete that one. And let me see. I'm going to make this one more the color of our model. And again, you just have to play around with this until you get it the way you want it. I mean, the possibilities are endless. You could play around with it forever. Okay, so anyway. So this is the node tree setup. We have our mask image texture here, which we have set to non-color data. We have our metal texture JPEG here, which we have set to color. We have our normal map set to non-color data here. And we have our fourth image texture, which is the displacement map, also set to non-color data. The displacement map runs into the displacement on the viewer. The normal map comes out of color, even though it's non-color. It comes out of color. You have to create a normal map node. It goes into the bottom of that, comes out of there into the normal on your white diffuse color. Your original mask layer, image texture layer up here, comes out into a mixed shader. It goes into the FAC on top and then out to surface. Your original diffuse color of your material, your underlying material, which ours is blue, comes into the first color on your mix shader. And then your white diffuse, which is what allows your image texture to shine through your mask layer, goes into the bottom shader, and that's what your normal feeds into, and that's what your color and then your color ramp feeds into. Because if you remember, if we unhook the color ramp and we take just our metal JPEG texture and hook that into color, that's what we have, because that's the original picture from Blender School. So, you know, if you're happy with that, you can skip the whole color ramp step. However, if you want to adjust it, then you need to add a color ramp and bring that out and into the white, the color of the white one that you did, and then adjust from there all your different values. So as you can see, that's what it looks like on the side of the head. Now the rest of the model looks pretty crappy at the moment. So what I'm going to do is show you how to set up your camera and light your scene so you can see what it looks like actually rendered. Because remember, this is just a preview. You can hear the computer struggling. We only have it set to 10, so it only looks but so good. So I'm going to show you how to set up your lights, your camera, and so you can render it out into a final product. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is Shift Z with the mouse hovered over this, and we're going to go back here. Then you're going to hit 0 on your number keypad, and that's going to bring up your camera view. You then need to hit N on your keyboard and bring up your controls here, and right here, it's kind of hard to see, under view, it says lock camera to view. And what that does is it allows you to position your model the way you want it without the camera moving. If you unlock this and you did that, then the camera would move as well, and you wouldn't be able to move your model into the camera view because the camera only sees what's inside of this rectangle box. So under view, hit N on your keyboard. This menu will pop up. Under view, hit lock camera to view, and then holding down Shift and the middle mouse button, I'm going to manipulate my robot around until I get it in what I think is going to be a decent pose. For more control, you can hold down the control button and your middle mouse button and slide your mouse forward and back. So holding control and holding the middle mouse and sliding your mouse, it gives you very minute incremental movements. Sometimes that's very helpful when you're dealing with Blender. So that's pretty good, I guess. Uncheck lock camera to view, hit N, and now we can see what we're working with here. Hit 0 on the number keypad again, scroll back. Now your camera view won't change. Your camera's where you want it to be, so it's right there. Nothing's going to happen to it. Right click to put your 3D cursor here where you can see it, and then Shift A, and we're going to create a plane. Plane comes in right here. Left click to lock it in, and we're going to hit S, and we're going to scale it up pretty big like that. We're going to middle mouse scroll back. I'm going to turn on my 3D manipulator because I want to move it up, and I'm going to scale it a little bigger. So S again, scale it out, and we're going to come over here to materials, and we're going to give it a new material. So we're going to hit the plus sign, new. We're going to come down here to where it says diffuse, and we're going to choose emission, and under strength we're going to click it, hit 5 on the keyboard and enter. That's 5.000, not 0.5. We want this fairly strong so that we'll be able to see, and you can adjust it up and down accordingly. As you see over here, a brand new node tree popped up. Don't get alarmed, your node tree is still there. You just have to go back to the material that it's associated with. So this is the material panel for your entire scene. So if you remember, our initial material, which covered our whole model, is here. Here's the node tree for it. Our material that's associated with just the piece of the helmet that we have been dealing with for the last half hour or so. And here's the node tree associated with that. And now we just created a new material for this plane. So here's the node tree associated with that. And we made that an emission because that's going to be our light. So we're going to deselect. We're going to hit Shift A again, because if we just copy, we're going to copy the material as the emission, which we don't want for the bounce layer at the bottom. So we're going to left click to lock it in, S to scale. We're going to scale it up, and we'll scale it up a little bit more. Then we're going to use our manipulator, and we're going to drop it down to just underneath our model. Okay, then I'm going to turn off the manipulator because it annoys me. It gets in the way generally. If you hit 0 again, as you can see, our render window is still there. And if we hit Shift Z, you can see what we're going to be looking at through our camera. Now I think I want it a little closer than that. So Shift Z again. I'm going to hit N to pull up the lock camera view. We're going to lock camera view again. And we're going to hold control, push down middle mouse. We're going to slide in. And that's as far as it'll let me go. Uncheck that, hit N, and now Shift Z. So I guess that'll be okay. So now we're going to go, and we'll Shift Z out of this again. We're going to go back to here, and we're going to change our samples to rendered. We're going to make, let's make it 200, and then we're going to come up here to render, and I believe I have it set to render in a new window. Yeah, where you want it to render will be here. If you have it render in image editor, it'll render in here, and sometimes that can make Blender crash. So I tend to have it set as new window, so when I hit render image, another window pops up like this, and it renders the image in here, which is also useful because I can save the image that I render out of here if I want to use it, say for the thumbnail for this tutorial, or whatever. So this is rendering. It's one frame, and you can see each of the squares that it renders out has to reach 200. So I'm going to pause the video while it finishes rendering, and I'll be right back. Okay, so there's the final render of our texture that we applied to the helmet of the robot. And I can save this picture if I want to, but I'm not going to right now. So that's basically it. I do want to show you the node tree one more time, because that's really where all the good stuff happens. And let me make it bigger, because what I do is I take screenshots of them, and why isn't this shutting? I take screenshots of them, and that way I can pull them up later and use them for reference. So I'll make this big. Like I said, we have our 1, 2, 3, 4 image textures, our mask we made, our JPEG texture of the metal, our normal map texture of the metal, and our displacement map texture of the metal. The normal map one needs its own normal map node. We have 2 diffuses. One is, like I said, the new material. This material is your base for your entire model. If you work off of this material, everything that you do in this node tree is going to affect the entire model, which you may want, which is fine. But in this instance, we only wanted to do it to the certain part of the UV, so we created a new material, and all of this is associated with that material. So that's this node here. Then we needed to create a white node in order for it to allow the image texture to shine through the mask using the alpha or not using the alpha, however that works. Remember to set everything to non-color data on your image textures except your JPEG image of your metal. That's the only one you leave color. That's the one you run through color ramp, and you run it into the white diffuse, and then out to this mix shader. Your original blue material is in the first slot of color on the mix shader, and your mask layer comes out into the FAC of your mix shader, and then all of this here goes through the mix shader and out to your viewer. Displacement is by itself down here attached to your displacement viewer out here, and that's it. I hope it wasn't too overwhelming. Like I said, I got this technique, if you will, the know-how to do even this little bit of it from the Andrew Price tutorial on applying rust texture to a green gas can in the middle of a field, which was a very good and informative tutorial. Just as usual, Andrew Price is very good at what he does, and it is very in-depth. And after, you know, like the 25th node is added, it's like, okay, I can't process anymore. So I went back and went over it again and again and again, and finally came up with just this very, very, very basic node tree to be able to apply the material and the textures to the model to give it a realistic look. I chose the robot with the metal scratches because Ali asked me to. Those of you that know him out there, so I have done a lot of work on that robot, and I do have it with the metal and the textures applied over quite a bit of it, but I just wanted to do a very simple tutorial so that you can see how to do that. So back to the 3D view, Shift Z, and that's what we have. If you want to, like I said, we made the 2 planes, the bounce plane, which has no material applied to it actually, and the emission plane up there. If you wanted to, once your model was finished and you wanted to have some kind of background here, you can apply a background image now in 2.73. You hit the N, and over here I believe it's under display, world background, and that allows you to put different things and be able to see the world settings as you're working in the viewport. Or you can come here and you can change the color here to whatever you want, you know, so it's more complementary to your model. You just have to remember that whatever you put back here is going to bounce off of this, and you know, it may affect the model in a way you don't want it to, but just a little bit of information there to try and get the look that you want, because when you go to render this, you know, you may want to render it to show some friends or whatever, and you may not want the that gray background behind it. You may want something a little more interesting. So you can change that right here under World, and this, and just change it to whatever color you want, whatever color is complementary to your model. So that's it. I hope you found this useful and not too overwhelming. It's a lot to take in. Once you wrap your brain around how the materials work and how the textures affect the materials, and you know, the UVs and all of that, it starts to make a little bit more sense. But if you have any comments, questions, even criticisms, leave them below. Again, you know, I'm just trying to do this little bit by little bit. I find that if I chunk things up into smaller parts, that it works a little bit better. So thank you to Andrew Price for even showing me how to do this much of it, and also Blender School for their texture pack, which I will put the link below this video. So comment, like, and subscribe if you like it, and by all means go to my husband's YouTube channel, Alimayo, A-L-I-M-A-Y-O, Arango, A-R-A-N-G-O. He has tons and tons of videos on how to do things in Blender that you may find useful as well. And on his homepage, he now has a donate button if you feel that you'd like to contribute to his the time and talent that it takes to make those tutorials. It would be greatly appreciated. So I hope to hear from you soon, and have a great day.